fashion. And previously, Mark was ACD at Parsons Studios, and currently he is at Erin Paris. And I will let himself describe himself and the work speak for itself. And we're going to have a little smaller discussion in the front, and we're going to open it up to more Q&A. So welcome, Mark. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I was just remembering that the last time I was in this room, the air conditioning didn't work. It was in August. It was about 104. I'm very happy. I'm not going to talk about myself because that's not why we're here. But if you want to know, I'm sure we'll talk to you afterwards. I think it's more about really what we're trying to drive to, what we're trying to figure out, and that's what I have for you today. A lot of questions. I don't have a lot of answers, but I have a lot of thoughts. And I think today is going to work much better if you ask questions as we go. So feel free to raise your hand if there's something that you want to probe on. That's how we get to the answers. So everything.
Stand in front of the microphone.
Oh, good question. I forget about that. I know that everyone says, Fina, speak louder. That's the question today that we're going to be addressing. I put a number of these different slides. The backgrounds really don't have much to do with some of the copy, but it's just things that I liked. I rarely get to do that. So I think, and again, this was animated. This was supposed to be like a million brands converging into just this black mess. And if you think of that, that's really how consumers, or all of us, see things today. Everything comes through our phones, it's around us. It used to be that you were faced with 3,000 advertisements a day. I don't even know what it is anymore. And I think in this concept of overabundance and all of that, I think that yes, we have more access, but again, with all those choices, do we really know what we want? Do we really know what we need? How do we glean that information? What are those products about? These are questions that we're asking ourselves. And then in some of these brands that we just put up there, they have high and low. There's many ways into them. So you can say, and again, I heard this earlier about the level of luxury and the way into luxury. It's different for each one of us in the way that we see it. And when we work as, I guess, advertisers, that's really what we do and what I do. We have to take that into consideration. So we try to look at the target and then address that and how those communications or those products affect that. So, is this luxury? Maybe. Is it luxury because it says Parisian chic? Or is it luxury because of the products themselves? And again, these are some new, we tried to put up some new websites specifically. Is this luxury? And you look at the navigation there and it only has 5 points. So is this luxury through its simplicity? Oh, is that any better? I don't know. I don't really know. Do I like that dress? Maybe. Do I like the aesthetic? Maybe. So for me, that could be an assumed type of luxury, or the way that I feel about it. Again, we're looking at things in the way into brands. There's a perception about, you heard that earlier about the less is more, but again, in that editing down, brands can exist. And you see that in a lot of brands today. Like Hims or Glossier, they're editing things down for you. They're putting forward minimal products. So if you look at that, that's a form of luxury in itself. So they're actually, the luxury here is in the selection process. So your time is a luxury as well. And that's something that we consider too as we look at brands. That's not luxury for me, but for someone else it might be. But it's there for a reason, because as we start to look at this, it It used to be that luxury was all one shape, it was one size. And now it's expanding. It's including other people. And I didn't mean that in a derogatory way at all. Just more examples. So, this is a key statement for us. And you're going to hear me say we and us. That represents sort of the thought process and the way that we look at brands and the way that we answer questions for brands. And that this word, mobility, is really important because everything that we do now, a lot of clients don't even want to see the print ad. They just want to see, how does it work on my phone? Can I see the logo on the phone? So if you look at that, that is a portal into luxury. So no matter what the brand is, it has to function in that respect. And it functions through storytelling. However, the perception of what luxury used to be is this feeling of, where you had this class situation. And a lot of this freedom of luxury is perceived in this concept of yachts and jets and sort of that idea of where you could go. There was a lot of separation there. So if we look at that, a lot of the interactivity or the way they do virtual reality, is that meant luxury? Because now they're experiencing the same type of things. And these again are questions that we're asking ourselves. That's actually a drawing of a private jet. So I wrote this phrase here because I thought it was interesting in the way that it sets us up for the world of communication. And in this, thy luxury is thyself. So we all have our perception of what luxury is. Maybe this is hidden, much headier. These are the conversations that we have within our agency and within the group. And I purposely chose this slide for the color on the lips. So does gold signify luxury anymore? No? Different forms of luxury. And what's interesting about this is that now, who's on the left, right? Billionaire, beauty brand, sartorialist, Victoria Beckham. So these are the people that are new, I don't know if they're style denizens or whatever they are, but leaders. And they are leading now the industry. They're leading the path into what we are proceeding. So if you buy into this, you're buying into their story. And there's a reason why I chose these specifically, because of not only the reach, but the way that the products are being marketed, but there are different levels of luxury. Like Victoria Beckham's, if you've ever looked at one of those suits and the way that it's made, like the tailoring is to the level of Tom Ford. And that's something that is a form of luxury. So those tangible codes still exist. But if you go back to like some of the earlier sites that we looked at, they're taking those things and reinterpreting them and then presenting them in a luxurious way or a simple way, and then selling it off. So that if you think of it again, the way you buy into the brand is another form of that luxury. So, in the concept of this thought, as it builds out of it, so we go back to this quickly. So the DNA or what exists in the person then becomes the brand, right? And we start to look at like who are these people that are influencing the masses. And I just pulled these from YouTube. It's crazy, the interpretation. Like, is this another case of the emperor's new clothes? I don't know. But just because we give somebody something, does that mean that it is luxurious, or is that it is something that we really need or desire? I don't follow these people. A lot of people do. When I first look at that, like 5 million subscribers. What's interesting about a lot of this, we look at that, it's affecting, as they begin to grow and market brands, it's harder and harder for us to do it because then they carry the weight. So they actually then become that brand itself. So you can kind of see how it really works. For us, the questions we're asking about, when is it going to explode? We've already seen like a huge drop off in influencers, and it's just not working the way that it used to work because their influence, consumers are onto it right now. They know they're getting paid for it. It's all out. It's all public. So where is that going to go, and how does that affect the brands? Like it's interesting. Have any of you looked at Inez's Instagram this week? Anyone take a look at it? It's worth looking at because it's all animated cartoons. And it's not what you would perceive from that brand, like an old saddle brand, right? It is so, it's still a lot of it is unattainable for a lot of people. But why are they doing that? Why are they, is that the way that they're going to reach a new audience?
Yeah.
So we wrote this, this line here. Billionaires can wear whatever they want, right? And it used to be that when you saw a billionaire, what were they wearing?
Design.
Right, they were traveling to Paris and for the haute couture, and they were having everything done, and they had the suits made, and everything was bespoke, everything was saddle row, and they had all of that. But now, that's a symbol of success, right? Is that J. Crew t-shirt? Yeah, Walmart. But is it wrong or is it right? I don't know. It's not for us to really judge. But so you have this thing so the perception of luxury is here. So someone like this, they can buy anything, right? This is how he chooses to present himself. Or is it this? So is this going to make you buy a phone mom? To alleviate, I understand the way he's marketing and what he's doing and catch the fun that they're having and bringing back some of that. But is this luxury? So as we start to get to this, we can see the conclusions. So does anyone know where we're going here? You still hear me in the back there? So I think that the ultimate luxury, and again, guys, this was going to be animated, so it didn't just sit there with red rows. The ultimate luxury is being able to express yourself in who you are. And that's key, as a conclusion. So in that, we're looking at this just from a psychological point of view and the way that consumers feel. So we used to have the uniforms. And the uniform was, to signify success in luxury, you had to dress and be a certain way, right? You had to have that tailoring. No, you could be, what's his name there with the t-shirt? Or you could be endorsing a brand when do you think they're getting paid that much? And so if you're expressing yourself, that form of luxury can change any way that you want it. So when we get to that, what we were trying to say in this whole theory, if we look at it in this theology or what it's all about, it's just about humanism. And so right now, we're all rushing, kind of worshiping our own altars, or who we are. And that is what we think, at least for marketers, that's what we start to pay attention to. And what's key about this, in that idea of the self or the individual. Now, if you think of this, and we were talking a little bit earlier, but a lot of brands right now are launching with single SKUs. You start to, when I say that, you can think of some of the brands, or smaller brands that are challenger brands, like you see in the subway, Hims or Glossier. And they're taking individual habits and they're addressing those and then presenting a product to them in a really simple way. And that in itself, people are buying into. And if it supports back to this, then you can see where that new luxury is beginning to exist. So they're not buying the mass brands in the same way. They're buying these brands, and for them, that is a form of luxury. So there are other ways into this too. So we express our belief systems in many different ways. Every brand right now that I'm working on, wants to have a platform for philanthropy. They talk a lot about experiential. What's the story behind the product? Where's the product going? What are we doing? We should get it in the hands of somebody else. So you can see how they're starting to link this together to reach different people and see if we can then pull them into that form. So a lot of that, if we look at the experiences, and what I'm trying to drive to is what the ending you'll see where it comes to. But in this thought about the worth of those pieces and what makes your life worthy to yourself. And oops. A lot of this, I mean, I debated whether to put the fame thing on there, but I think the likes is another way. That's a whole different story. We'll get to that in the next speech. But what is this fame all really about? So in that, and it drives into this sort of, so if you're supporting a brand in that luxury, and you're presenting it back out to the world, yourself, and you're being validated for it, it makes you feel better. And I think that that's what, again, is another form of luxury and how you then attain that for yourself. So if we look at it from marketing, where are we going? What do we have to think of? What do we have to consider? All those different those type of things. So what we do is we do a lot of the mapping to try to see where the brand, working on 3 new brands right now. Of those 3 new brands, 2 of them are single SKUs. And it's interesting, and 2 of them are brand new products that have never existed before. They're habit-forming things. So they're based on, one of them is based on an experience, and the other one is based on taste. And where we try to receive that. So when we do that, then we'll create that and create a luxury the way that that single SKU looks, and then build a world around it so that people can buy into that world, that form of whatever that experience is. How many of you had an Aperol Spritz this summer? Like you can see that trend like really pushing, so that when that happens, and then you'll see the next one. So what we're trying to do is then create a new spirit that'll be the new Aperol Spritz. And why does that work? Why does Aperol Spritz work for you guys? Why did you ask? It's refreshing. That you believe the story, right, behind it. Everyone in Greece was drinking it. How many of you know this brand? It's a, this brand we did, every client goes, we want to be like Drunk Elephant. And there's some real good reasons for it, because there's a lot of high efficacy here. But in itself, I think that this is a form of luxury for product and product marketing. Right? It doesn't mean that it takes, craftsmen 10,000 hours to sew it together. But it is a form of that, right? They lay out, they see how important their philosophy is. So when that is stitched together, they're trying to get you to buy into whatever that world is. And if you then have the time and the afford and you buy into that, again, that supports the group. So, what's next? And this is not going to work, but it was supposed to scroll up. So what's next? Data privacy, one of a kind, DIY, or however you say that. Creating your own brand, new technology. You've been eating for your own specific blood type. And I put in here your on-call doctor because I actually worked on a brand the year before last. And it's a new luxury where you go in and you have your own set of doctors based on your own needs. You pay premiums. You don't even have health care. You just have this group of doctors that work for you. And that's so you're paying above and beyond, but that in itself is another form of luxury, and that's why it's included in there. We did the whole branding for that and the whole concept of it. But that's where people are going. And they're even going to the moon. So I think when you really look at this in itself, the new luxury is really about freedom. And it's about the freedom of choice. It's the freedom of where the brands exist. Whether by price point is the way the old way we used to think of things, but now they're about how we relate to them and how that experience exists. So, any thoughts? Questions? That's my spiel.
We're gonna actually move to the front, and we're gonna actually have a chit chat with you to open a larger discussion with Mark. So I welcome you to sit down. We'll ask some questions, and I'm sure the committee has a few questions that they might actually want to ask.
If you don't ask any questions, I can just go back to work.
So to kick off, I guess there are a few questions on the table. These are actually some questions that a few of us have put together. Some of them are duplicated here, but I think continuing to the line of discussion that we've had in the general conference, one of which is, I think it's determining what luxury is now and in the future. But then the other discussion we just had a discussion on was, is luxury an agent for change, and how do we actually address inclusivity, sustainability, social justice, and maybe show social awareness? Would you like to kind of
Yeah, I think
those
that's
discussions? It should be.
Is that better? To that point, luxury be a force for good, absolutely. And you can see how important, that's why I put the drunk elephant brand up there. And I could have put many others, but you have that, and it is a really important thing for companies today. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I don't even know if we have to say awareness, but supporting the cause. And the campaign that I did most recently with Estee Lauder launched on the 1st as well. And that is an example of a brand getting behind something, beginning with Estee Lauder and then really trying to do good, and trying to put their money towards a cause or towards something. So I do think that it can be like that. I also do work for an organization called Girl Be Heard, and that's a pro bono thing. What we're really trying to do there is get behind empowerment, try to use what money that we can then, in our time, to change people's lives. And I think that that's an important thing for me, and I think it's an important thing for brands. So as I said, of the new brands that I'm working on right now, they're all looking for whatever cause fits their mission and fits their brand beliefs.
So from the past few panelists, I think the issue of empowerment, for instance, was brought up with Erin from Corr. And then there are also kind of discussions on kind of luxury now and future and how do we engage. And that was also brought through the attention of like Christopher Lassie from Barney's on an earlier panel. How do you think these kind of discussions of change and the future is kind of working towards a more inclusive or access, like is access as something that you think luxury is still to accessibility?
I think if you just take the word empowerment, I think it's a little overused now. And I think that, how many of you need a brand to tell you that you need to be empowered? Go away. I already am. I'm taking care of things. And that's what I was talking about here. It's about the self. We're empowered already. And, the tools that we have give us that access, give us the ability to invent a brand at home. We don't need really a brand to tell us, go get empowered, or we're going to support you in that way. We're already doing it ourselves. And I think what we need is much more social consciousness for brands. Like you just saw that Drew Barrymore just announced that that she is cruelty-free, and PETA supported her and supported her brand. That's a Walmart brand. So you can start to see, it does impact. So the more voice that we have, if we use that for our own forms of social justice, we can change that and force brands to do this. A lot of brands try to do this, but there's a lot of regulations that doesn't allow it to happen. Particularly when you make a plastic or make any of you in product design know this, but you can't just make something recyclable. You have to follow the rules of what the government sets.
I'm going to ask our committee members to have some questions and discussion also.
Hi, I'm Emily Huggard. I'm director of the AAS Fashion Marketing Program, assistant professor of fashion communication. I wanted to ask actually, you touched on this a bit, but a lot of brands I think are thinking about creating value outside of their product and service, and I think that's, whether that's social value or experiences, and I think a lot of brands are talking about now around culture, how they link to culture or shape culture. And I'm wondering how you might navigate that with your brands. I mean, I guess it's sort of, I'm always kind of questioning what is culture, who owns culture, who creates it, and maybe you could tell a good example of a brand that's maybe has sort of strong link to culture and how you might work with brands on that.
It comes at different levels. It's really hard to say that, does a brand exist just because of its culture, or does a brand's story exist through what they do? So there's a brand new brand that I'm working on right now is looking at culture and going, you know what, there are no other products that are made for this particular need. So we're going to reach to that culture and that mindset and then target them specifically. And the product, yes, they're selling something, but they're selling it because no one has ever created anything in this category because of our own belief systems, our own privilege, our own misogynistic world. And when you look at that in itself, they are empowered to do this because they have the freedom, because of what it offers us. And that in itself is that form of luxury. Now they're going to end up creating something that is culturally relevant. The minute this thing launches, it's going to skyrocket. I can already tell. Because no one paid attention to these people. And that's where I think that if you understand that, from a larger masstige point of view, I've been working on heels. And culturally, heels understands the market. They're from New York. They know their East Village. We go to the store. We put real people in the advertising. We put the pharmaceutical people that are in there. Those type of things are culturally relevant because they understand who the audience is. So brands can start that way or exist that way. It just depends. So is that getting to?
Hi, I'm Jessica Corr, faculty in School of Design. I just have a question about the one SKU brand that you've been working with and sort of that, what may last a long time or maybe a quick trend. Because traditionally it was really about encompassing a lifestyle, especially if you think about a brand being a personality or having DNA. So how do you go from, how do you grow as a brand if when you start, we do this one thing great, where we make the best backpack, or we make the best glasses in the world, or if it's just this one thing, how do you become more than that? Or is that it, are those brands short-lived?
I think that it depends on what your aspirations are and what you really want. It's funny, a friend of mine has a very well-known fashion brand. And he goes, everyone keeps going, we want to do something with you, we want to do, and he's like, no, I don't want to grow any bigger. I like what I do, this is what I want, I have all I need. And I think if you understand that again comes from the individual. And I think that a lot of people are doing that, like, do you really want to be in a Balmain ad? Hell no. But Some do. I personally don't want it. But if you want to do for a specific product, like I launched one of the single SKU products that I launched was just a body wash. And it was all about because this person was paying attention to a line and actually put something together and loved the experience. So she started this line on her own. She mortgaged whatever she had to do and just put it together. And that, because she believed in it. And from that, yes, she has ideas for the future, but I think that really setting that and understanding that, and that's a lot of what my new company is focused on, is about consumer habits, not about necessarily brands themselves. Because coming out of those habits and understanding those habits, the brand then naturally grows. It used to be we bought into brands, but there were fewer brands. Now there's so many brands. I mean, how many of you just shop one product for lipstick? You don't go to one company just for lipstick, do you? If you do, you're not telling the truth. But you're always trying things. And so those products, so when you look at that and you evaluate that in your choice, that's really what it's about. So we focus on those products. And even in the launch, whenever we do that for a big company or a small company, we focus on that. So whether it's just a lead item, like we find with a lot of brands, if we have one key item within the line of the collection, we can then push the rest of it much easier.
Oh yes, I just had a question. Something that I would find very luxurious is spectacular information providers. I'll give you for instance, and maybe you might have a list of folks. So for example, something like I was looking for a beautiful house near a lake that I like, and I spent a lot of time just kind of going through realtor.com, et cetera, and it took a long time, and finally I purchased something. But I would like to have had someone in this information category that could have lists for me of spectacular things, wonderful things, that would save me time. Another thing would be, for example, say romantic places that are near New York City, for example. And just another example, so for years I always did sports, and Pilates was all around me, but I discovered years later that I would have like kind of fabulous Pilates sessions. So just someone that could provide information on wonderful things, if you recommend, if you have a few folks you know or lists or this kind of thing, I would find that a great luxurious feature. They have information providers that are terrific.
I don't know how to... I mean, I look at everything, so it's kind of hard for me to pinpoint that. I'd have to know a little bit more of like what you're looking for, you know, because I tend to look at people that curate things, like, you know, the more way you would see Pinterest or those type of things where people create like a group of things, and then from there, then I just continue to do my research into that. So,
like for example, so you might have like categories you're interested in. So fabulous food, you might have someone that you respect in that category, and travel, someone you respect in that category, just experts that way that you touch base with.
Right, like, you know, if I take food specifically, which is a passion of mine, you know, yes, I follow Renee Redzepi, but I really like the way his wife cooks. So I follow her as well, because the things that she does is more in tune to what I like. And so she is more of an influence on me, even though I respect him as being the lead chef of the world.
Right.
And so if you dig deep enough, and that's what it used to be, research was a pain in the ass to find, to get stuff done. And now if you just take a little bit of time and ask the right questions, you can dig. And that's what I make my team do right off the bat. Like, we're working on a new spirit. And I said, well, let's find out, let's go back to BC and find out what happened there.
Maybe to reframe that question, we could look at, are there ways that digital platform or technology could be a form of enabling kind of discussion on influences or influencers, or as you mentioned earlier in your own lecture, influencers no longer have the same cachet or access. I'm not rewording you, but maybe in that same manner, if there's ways to provide access, or in another way of looking at it, if in an earlier kind of panel, as discussed with luxury as, you know, social good or agency, if luxury was accessible to all, would it still be considered luxury? So, in a sense, you know, if there's a guide or whatnot in a digital manner, maybe you can answer to that, like accessibility and can that still be a form of luxury if it's accessible to all, such as the internet?
I mean, again, it goes back to that, is a t-shirt luxury? If it's made by Carl or if it's made by J. Crew, really what's the fundamental difference? Maybe it's Egyptian cotton or Fina cotton, and it's what's behind it. So it's the belief system of what luxury is really about, where it used to be essentially just about the craft and the cost, right? And as that's gone away, other things have sort of stepped in and selected it. So when we're looking at things specifically, like to your point, if I want to dig into something, we do it slightly differently. We don't necessarily look for a place to tell us stuff. We'll put the questions together and then do a survey. We'll actually let other people do the work for us in that respect. So we can find things out really easily that way, very quickly. Just by, if you ask the right questions, you can find out who is really the influencer that is driving sales, or what's the realtor in that region that's doing the best job.
We have a question in the back, or maybe Jessica, if you don't mind helping. There's a far corner.
While she walks there, let's try you. Right?
Yeah, there's one in between.
Because I know you can project, right?
Hi, I'm Anton Ginsberg. So it sounds like that your definition of luxury kind of steps away just from aesthetics and more into the ethical category. So I'm curious about how you work with clients. Would you take a client with whose ethical position you disagree, or would you advise the client on certain practices as you work with them?
Yes and no. I mean, I think I've fired clients before, but not unnecessarily. But if I believe if we can't work together as a team, and if we're not working for a common goal, it doesn't work, no matter how hard you force it. And you have to respect the client and whatever their belief systems are. I mean, if a client comes to me and they're doing shit with ivory, I'm going to say, I'm not working with you. But that's just a personal thing. And again, it comes from whatever your awareness is. Does that help you? I mean, I think that it's really up to the individual. In some companies, you know, I think that you don't, we have many more brands that are very, very consciously aware, so they're trying to do good in one way or the other. You have very few brands that are trying to abuse the world or do the wrong thing.
Would you work with a tobacco brand, for example?
Probably not. I mean, I worked on them in the past and didn't really, you know, we just did it because I couldn't call the shots, but now I can. And I think that what our new company and what we're standing for, we would not work with a cigarette brand. Unless it was something that, you know, I don't know, like is vaping. Is that going to kill everyone in 2 years? You know?
So would you say that there's actually a question right there. Would you say that when you're working on projects and clients, because you work with various luxury brands and or kind of just mass market brands, both in fashion and in beauty, the value system amongst these brands, do you think has played a role within how you determine how you market, or is this guided upon, as you mentioned earlier, the consumer's viewpoint?
That's a hard question to answer because, you know, a lot of brands struggle with many other things, you know, like I was saying, like regulatory issues, so they may want to do something, but they can't. So a lot of this comes up, like when I ran CoverGirl for years, we really tried to do a recycled package, and it was impossible. We couldn't get anything approved because it didn't follow the crush-proof thing, it didn't follow the level of PVC, so you just have to, you do your best and you try, but until really the world catches up, it's gonna be harder. But you do have a lot as the education and what clients and people care about becomes more commonplace, that's how things get changed. And that is a big difference from, when I first began the business where these questions were never even being addressed.
Hi, how are you, Calixto? I was just wondering, how are you dealing with the generational changes, meaning millennials, Gen Z, and how they are evolving the concept of luxury, and how are those conversations going with the brands that you work with?
I think that's a really good question, because what we as humans in our DNA, we like to categorize things, we like to know definitions, and we like to say, it's either age or color or race or et cetera, or whatever. So we put these things on and we say, yes, millennials. And everyone's chasing millennials, but to me, it's that is a lack of understanding about really what consumers' habits are, what drives consumers. If you look at people in that generalized term, you're kind of missing the point. And that happens a lot, and we find people now have forgotten about the baby boomers, but they have more money than the millennials. So from a marketing point of view, you have to look at that and address that. And again, that is a category, so is it Gen Y? I mean, we're running out of letters, so I'm not really sure what's next. Way in the back.
Yeah, way in the back. I think she's been trying to ask this question.
So I have
2 rapid fire questions and then 1 longer question. So the first rapid fire question is, what is the name of the pro bono group to which you volunteer?
Girl Be Heard. And before, they used to be called Project Girl Performance Collective. And the deal that I did, I said, if I'm going to work for you, I get to change the name. So I wrote the name Girl Be Heard.
Okay, and the second question is, what do you think about where Fur is going, given that Diana Furstenberg and other established designers are protesting the use of fur? I mean, does it work for highest end luxury brands like Jane Mandel? I mean, that's the first thing I thought of. Is what's the future of Jane Mandel given their financial situation?
This is a tricky subject because, yes, fur does keep you warm. But do you really need it today to keep warm? My answer to that is that no. We're not out, trudging through the North Pole, and we need to really, we're not, there with our guides, trying to survive. We don't need that in New York City. And there's so many other alternatives. But I just recently worked with Canada Goose, and, they do a lot to harvest the fur in an ethical way. We have a lot of issues where it went down specifically, but a lot of us have pets. And what do we feed our pets? We feed them the food that comes from the animals that are used and where the down comes from. So we have to understand, if you're going to build an argument or have an issue with it, you need to look at all sides of it. You're still wearing leather shoes. I think that there's a lot of those things. And I think that again comes from the person. So if a company does sit there and they put their money behind trying to save polar bears or work on, where climate change is happening, if they have to, ethically harvest coyotes or however you put it, that's their stance and that belief. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that was super helpful. And then just one last question. What is the future of experiences given the rise of experience-oriented institutions such as the Museum of Ice Cream, which was featured in Forbes, was featured in all the major magazines, and Hermes, they have the scarf thing where they were going from city to city with this scarf dyeing. What's the future for luxury?
I mean, again, it's it's trying to stand on water. I don't really have an answer for that, but I do think that as technology begins to play more into the things that we see, like we see now a lot more of fabrics and the way that they're made, a lot of that, and I think that even the way that if you think of experiences, the way that you touch things, like one of my team members yesterday came in and she had this new nail polish and she put ice on her nail and then lifted it off and it literally changed colors in front of you. Those, what I mean is that's a luxurious experience. To her it is. I'm not sure how much it costs, but again, asking how much it costs, and comparing that to luxury is kind of an outdated idea.
Can we go back to actually the question on
Nail polishes?
not nail polishes, but I think there is, at least at Parsons, there seems to be a kind of a provocative discussion in terms of pedagogy and as an institution, education institution, of kind of looking at sustainability on the full value chain and also closed loop, or at least an open loop design. You mentioned one product and have kind of an offset of a secondary product. And this might be also open to the larger public here on what you actually think of sustainability and social awareness. Do you think it is part of luxury companies to educate the public on this, or how is this brought back to the larger attention?
I mean, it's really difficult to sort of tell a company that they have to take on that burden. It costs them money. It's more about whether or not they want to. Do we really need plastic straws anymore? Do we really need plastic cups? Is this just an easy way into things? So in sustainability aspects, if you work harder, you can do things. Like a friend of mine showed me a bag 2 days ago that I was like, wow, that texture, that fabric looks amazing. She goes, yeah, it's made from plastic bottles. And I couldn't believe the feeling. It felt like felt. And again, that's someone using technology and then looking at it. And that again, it takes effort. And if you're willing to put the effort in, there's always an answer. I mean, we're smart as humans that you have to do that. And I think that that's what big brands are finding now with all these challenger brands, or what I'm calling these new luxury brands, is they're just chewing away at the big guys. Because they're asking those questions. They're coming at it from a different way. And they're taking the time to do it. And they're not looking for the margins. They don't have to answer the stockholders. Not everyone needs 18% growth.
That's interesting that you just reframed it as the new luxury, right? So the new luxury brands, how do they have challenges that potentially old French houses and Italian houses might have and might not have? What is your opinion on that? What is the new luxury brand? I think this is a question that everyone's kind of...
What is a new luxury brand?
What is a new luxury brand, yes?
How
do you define that?
I think it goes back to the individual. Like, for me, the things that I think are luxurious, are very different than you.
So is it
just trying to think of what I bought recently that I thought was like, wow, this is really great. I know what I did. I bought a tool recently, and if you think of it, why is it Home Depot? The tool, they took the time to put in soft touch plastic onto the handles. And it was the first time I go wow, that's like a luxury experience for something you're just gonna nail into the wall. And they didn't have to do that. They could have just done it the regular way that Craftsman or Stanley does it for many, many years. But they're adding a little bit of an experience from a tactile thing, which is some of the luxury codes, and they're pulling those into products where you've never seen them before, right? Like I just bought, it was given to me actually, this new water filter, and we've all seen Brita, right? Do we like the design? Could be better. It could fit more of our lifestyle. Well, this new water filter was designed, it looks like it came right out of a Scandinavian country. So someone took the time and the effort to make it better. The handle's bamboo, which we all know is a much more sustainable type product. And that's something that they did as a company. They didn't have to. They could have just gone and just bought new plastic, where everyone believes today that there's enough plastic in the world to never have to go and make any new plastic. We just can just keep recycling it.
You speak to materiality a lot in what you just...
It's important to me.
I think it is important as a designer. And just wrapping up from the last few presentations, I think Preeti she's the art director of textiles at the Parsons Fashion Program, and also even Karen Dior was talking about like leather goods, and it's a very long trained craftsmanship kind of discussion. How do you think materiality affects kind of the way that luxury goods could be developed or marketed? By the way, bamboo is not always a sustainable product. It's actually
Like, look at those.
again, this is the art.
It's very invasive.
But it's a very invasive weed actually, and it takes a lot of water, and I won't go into it, but like I think I did my master's thesis on it, so if you want to go back to my Princeton years, we could go on that. But anyways, we'll go on. But yeah, back to the materiality discussion on.
Better than chopping down pine forests.
It's probably. But what do you think about the materiality and the long length of artisanal goods? Because I think there are faculty members such as very interested in like crafts, leather goods, and durability. Does that become a larger question on product development, or how do you view it as a marketer and an advertiser?
It's funny when we all see something, like I put this plastic cup in front of you, instantly you've already done, in your mind, evaluated its worth, right? Just by looking at it. You know what, just by the level of design and the way that it's just, the weight, it has no weight. Those are the things that we consider as marketers. So a lot of times I pick up the product and I don't even look at it, and I just feel it. What does it feel like in my hands? Having worked on some of the Tom Ford beauty stuff, like when you pick up even the little small girls and boys, the product itself, and it's small, is heavy. Like it feels like it's substantial. So I then know instantly that the metals, whether they're recycled or not, that those metals are probably real. Not that many plastic componentry, and then the enamel was done to the satisfaction, so I can see that, and so that signifies a luxury type item to me. And that's the stuff that we look at too. Whenever, like, we're currently designing 3 new product lines, and we, depending on what the product is, like if it's a body wash, it can only weigh so much, but if another product, the way the componentry is, it has a density to it, and that signifies luxury.
We have time for one more question or 2 more. Just go.
Hi, thanks Mark for the presentation, it was great.
Also,
I was struck by the closing statement when you say luxury, the new luxury is freedom. Like the context we're living in is quite striking, and I like to think of freedom as a human right, not something that is scarce and just for a small amount of people. So I'd like to understand more about your thinking.
well, let me look at it from a personal point of view. That if I go on a beach vacation, right? If I go to a beach that's completely secluded, that is a form of luxury that's harder to get. But if I just go to a regular one, I have to experience that with many other people, right? So for me, personally, that form of freedom, of getting away from things, is a real luxury. It's a real luxury. Like my phone now, I don't answer from 9 to 9. That's a form of freedom, and that's a luxury today because the phone is extremely invasive, like bamboo. So I'm gonna come right back at you after that. That when we look at that, and that's why we came to that conclusion, because we were just sitting here going like, wow, we don't even know. I sat down with my strategist and a couple of people in the office when Wendy posed these questions, and I said, what really is luxury? I was in that new building on Park Avenue, the new tall one, and Hermes did the elevators. You guys been in that building? Like, wow, it has a seat in it. So, I think we were going to like the 12th floor, and I said, I gotta sit down. It was really plush. Like, that was amazing luxury. But it was luxury. It wasn't that I was buying it, but it was the experience I had being in that elevator, being escorted to that floor by that gentleman. that was an escape, and that was just, to me, like a form of, for a momentary freedom away from sitting in the elevator at my work with like this and praying to God it doesn't get stuck, So it's not brand related. And I think that that's what I tried to get to this presentation, is we always think of luxury from a brand. It's a Rolls Royce, it's it's an amazing shoe by Louis Vuitton. People can buy Louis Vuitton now at the runway and just return it the next day, So, again, that's the erosion of those codes. So if you're looking for other places, that's how do you escape from that? And I think that that's the conclusion that we were trying to get to.
One last one, and then we're finished for time. Can we combine your questions as neighbors, just next to each other?
I don't know reverse, but my question is actually related to when you're answering about the group of millennials who are active users on social media. You also mentioned about how influencers, whether in fashion or beauty industries, have experienced a drop-off. I'm just wondering, how would you define influencers in fashion or luxury industry?
Well, I think that we're finding that there's certain different types of influencers. The influencers that actually live within a brand and you believe it. Like there's a real believability to things now. So it's different than if you know that there's someone standing, on my old street, Gay Street, I see 15 influencers a day. They're taking pictures on my stoop with their shoes and bags. I didn't believe any of it because I know that they're being sent the products. Consumers know that. But if you look at an influencer that you really, to me an influencer is someone that lives within the brand or actually uses it. Like if someone is using, I don't know, it just popped in my head, but an Hermes saddle, and they're actually like an Olympian rider, I'm going to believe that before I believe that, so-and-so goes up and hugs a horse out there in Long Island because she got paid, $5,000. See the difference? And consumers are much more savvy. And I'm talking generalized terms. The ones that I showed, like the YouTube people, why does, I purposely avoided Rihanna on here. And I worked with Rihanna in the beginning of her sort of beauty education. We made her a cover girl. And it was interesting about, and I know how it works, but why does Fenty work so well as opposed to other big brands that actually have better products or more products for those type of lines? And I'm not saying that she doesn't have good products because they really put the time into it. Why is it working? So that's another type of an Uber influencer.
So we have a lot of questions to leave you with. I would love to invite the entire committee to come and provide some closing remarks and give Erin and everyone else. I've been talking enough the whole day. So if there's any questions, again, feel free to go to our website. We are prolonging this hopefully for a while. Feel free to hashtag and tweet at us, and we can continue this discussion also outside doing networking, and I'll let D-Blaze do their work.
Thanks, everybody.
Very quickly, just want to thank everyone for coming today. Thank you especially to, we have an amazing student team. I think you saw some of them making buttons and helping out with the bags and graphics. But this really was the result of actually a lot of faculty and students coming together to start to ask questions and then open it up to a larger conversation. So thank you for joining us.
Join us outside. There will be some wine and cheese, so we can continue your conversations. And also urging you, from the student level, if you want to get more involved, there is a student-led Redefining Luxury organization. They're outside ready to have you sign up and give you more information. Thanks so much.
Again, thank you very much for being here. I found myself nodding my head so many times and I've been in many, many different conferences, but now because I was part of the committee putting this together, I mean, this indeed has, I mean, I would say, the most nutritious, insightful, and thought-provoking opportunities for me. I actually had one question, and I wanted to ask this. The opportunity was never given to me. So, I mean, as a question that I want you to think further out, I wanna, give this question to you. Just visualizing this idea of luxury as a social change. A lot of things that I heard today are the kind of things that many brands, independent of whether you're situated in a luxury space or just a, low price point space, can do. And what are the things that you believe luxury can actually be able to do and be more effective in changing agents, or what are the qualities or equities that luxury can leverage to be really meaningful changing agent in our society? That's a good question. Again, I'm drawing this, actually to the audience. I want to think about this. And again, being a leader, I mean, there must be some quality that is different from that everybody else is doing. And if you are really interested in going into this space and do something different and contributing to the conversations of changing agents, what would that be? I mean, what that thing that we can, luxury brand can uniquely be able to do better than other brands do.
I think it's just really about asking the question. You have to ask the right questions. So the question I always ask in anything is like, why do I care? Because if they can't answer that, then no one's really going to buy into it. So that can come at many different levels. That's really the question that has to come up right away.
Great, so we'll end on a note of why do we care, and if you care about alcohol and wine, please feel free to go outside and we'll be happy to entertain you on that. If there's any questions, feel free to come up to us, and we will hopefully you've enjoyed this. For the individuals who've asked that we missed some panels, we will try to edit with solutions and have this uploaded and transcribed. So again, follow the website. There's no Instagram or Twitter. So definitely just go on the website. Thank you so much.